Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. This is the second in our series on looking at change and managing change. And we started in the first part of this series to say that change is a key part of our life and a key part of our leadership. If we want to be relevant, we have to change. One of the problems with change is picking what we change to. I mean, most people in leadership know that change ought to happen, but we tend to think change will be the same tomorrow as it is today, in the sense that it's almost like a direct line. In this book called Future Babble by Dan Gardner, he looks at how we try and predict change in the future. And he says that as humans, as leaders, we have status quo bias. He says this, let me read it to you. Of course, this doesn't mean we expect nothing to change. Change has made today what it is, but the change we expect is more of the same. In other words, we expect kind of tomorrow to be basically the same as today, just a kind of bigger, brighter, faster version of it. And it's interesting that we actually see that in the story in the Old Testament. In 1 Samuel, Samuel the prophet, you know, the man after God's own heart, as David was spoken about, but certainly that was true of Samuel as well. He'd recognized that Saul was not the king that God had called him to be, and God asked him to go and anoint a new king. So he goes to Jesse's household and he walks up, and Jesse's got all the sons out. Well, as you know, not all the sons, David wasn't even there. And when Samuel, this man of God, walks up, and it says this in 1 Samuel chapter 15. Now when he arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed stands before me. Whatever he saw, he believed that this was the Lord's anointed. Guess what happens, how God responds? Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't look on the things that man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Now we get that, we get the whole heart thing. But why the bit about or his height? Do you know what's interesting in 1 Samuel 10, when Saul was chosen, you know what was about him that was different from everybody else? It says in 1 Samuel 10, he was a head taller than everybody else. In other words, what Samuel did, turned up, there's Eliab, sees that he's tall and thinks, well, he's just like Saul. He must be who God's chosen. You know, we do that all the time. We expect tomorrow to just be a bigger version of today. You know, if change is a straight line, it's easy to pick. But if change moves radically, then we're going to miss it. Let me ask you a question. What do you think God might be bringing into your life or calling you to that's completely outside the world in which you see right now? What if God wanted to shift the direction you're going, the direction your ministry's going, the things that you do? Would you be open to it, or are you suffering from status quo bias even as a leader? The action. Where do you need to look for God leading you in new directions? And where do you need to be more open to God's movement and directing you in ministry?